Don't miss the conclusion to our Stephanie Crow series over on our Patreon. Moni tells the story about how she unexpectedly stepped into the mystery a year ago while working near Stephanie's hometown. After breaking down the evidence in case, Christy and Moni also give their own hypothesis on what really happened to Stephanie that does not match any of the suspects. For the amount of one coffee a month, you get these deep dives on true crime, videos of the team visiting haunted spaces, and their horror movie reviews. Come find us by just searching the Creepin' It Real show on Patreon. Creep It Real.
Welcome to the Creepin' It Real show, your one-stop shop for weird news, spooky, and otherworldly and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow Creepin' It Real show on Twitter at creepin_it. You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com. You can also go to our website, creepinitrealshow.com. Without further ado, welcome to this week's episode.
Hello and welcome to the Creepin' It Real show. I am one of your hosts, Miss Moni, and today we will be talking about folklore and ghost legends. But before we get started, I want to rope in my co-hosts and do a little discussion of what we've been watching lately. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Yardley. How are you on Super Bowl Sunday?
Hey, I am doing great. I can't complain. The weather is a little bit better. It's not as cold today. It's nice and sunny. And as far as what I've been up to and watching, I actually found out about a show called Sex Education a few weeks back. And when I finished that, turns out the second season had dropped that Friday. So I checked out the second season and that was great. And I revisited the Frankenstein Chronicles, which we kind of talked about a while back, but that's a very good show, so I started rewatching that.
Oh my gosh, Sex Education is so cute, and once we get Christy caught up on that one, we'll have to talk about it a little bit. It's non-horror. Well, I don't know, teenage scenarios can be kind of horrific, but
yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of Christy, what are you up to?
Oh, not much. Just living the life. Let me tell you, I have in-laws on the way here. They're going to stay for a couple of days, stopping off on their way home from Florida. They live up in Indiana, so they break up the trip, and they'll be staying here for a while. So after I get off with this, I'll be cooking Super Bowl food for everybody.
Yep.
And then just drinking, to be honest. I haven't had a drink in a while, so I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll drink today. So
that sounds like a good plan.
Rick and I have gotten on this Bang bandwagon. Have y'all ever had the drink Bang? B-A-N-G.
No.
It's like
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's like a keto-friendly energy drink, but we're not drinking it because it's keto. We're drinking it because it has like these vitamins and stuff in it. And we swear it does not give you a hangover. Like it cuts the hangover down. So we mix it with vodka, and it's really good. And they have like a sour head flavor that is so good. It's like not too sour, and I don't like sweet, so it's like the right amount of flavor. So we'll probably have a few of those and watch the bowl and go sports teams and
Woo, sports.
And I've watched a couple of interesting movies that I thought, first of all, they have really high ratings, which kind of surprised me, and they're very watchable, and I thought they were good. I don't like to build up movies too much because it just causes this like way huge space to be let down. Like if you don't have any expectations when you go into something, you just seem to enjoy it much more. So the first one is this movie called Sweetheart, and it has 5.7 on IMDb out of 3,000 reviews. So I think that's a pretty good space of average of people. Jen has washed ashore on a small tropical island, and it doesn't take her long to realize she's completely alone. She must spend her days not only surviving the elements, but must also fend off the malevolent force that comes out each night. So there's like a sea monster that comes out, and she. I
love sea monster movies.
It's a really different. I have no idea why they titled it Sweetheart. That has zero understanding of what. All I can think of is, I don't want to give much away, but she's kind of titled like Sweetheart. And isn't like trusted amongst her friends and stuff. And, it just, so people have a hard time believing her. But anyway, that's the only thing I can think of as to why they would title it Sweetheart, because otherwise that a name applies to zero of the movie.
They probably didn't know what to call it, so they're just like, okay.
Sweetheart. Then I guess I was on like a nautical situation, because then I watched a movie called Mermaid Down, and when I watched it, and I didn't look at the reviews because it just seemed like such an interesting topic, I was like, oh, I got to check this out. But it's got a 7.7 out of 3,300 reviews, so it's really good, but I was like, wow, that many people liked it. I was really surprised because it's very, very original. A mermaid is ripped from the Pacific. Her tail is chopped off and she's thrown into a mental home where no one believes she's a mermaid. She also doesn't speak very well. So you can imagine. It's kind of like
that sounds really creepy and cool.
It's creepy and weird, and it has everything in it. And it's also kind of girl power movie because it's a women's only or girls only mental institution. And the guy that runs it is a wackadoodle sicko. And he's the one that put her in the mental institution. So nice. Yeah, it's different. And I'm trying to get my daughter and her girlfriends to watch it because they love horror, and this is kind of like a great mix of horror and like girl power and a lot of really fucked up situations, like holy crap. So and then also I just want to do a little side note. Paranormal Caught on Tape, Moni got me hooked on that, and also Kindred Spirits are back with new seasons. I've been watching them. And last podcast on the left did a great series on the Heaven's Gate cult. I'm finishing
I
up.
will definitely listen to that. I told you I visited that house kind of recently, so I would totally listen to that. Okay, good.
Yeah, it's good. There's one more left, and this is the one where they actually talk about that day, that what happened. Everything else is like it's been 3 parts before this one, and it's all basically talking about the guy. Apparently Heaven's Gate cult has existed since the 70s. I had no idea that it went on that long before they finally did their crazy mass suicide in 97. So that's a long time of culting and not being that big on the radar. And also it sounds like they were like one of the laziest cults ever, because they just they weren't really focused on money. It really wasn't about the money for them. They were just kind of like, cool, shirking responsibilities and thinking that aliens are God, which, hey, I'm not against that thought either. But I'm not going to put on all black and a pair of Nikes and drink poison either. So there's a happy medium in there, right? Right, people, right?
Sure, totally.
Also, really quick before we get started on anything else, a listener brought attention to me that somehow our Hawaiian Night Marchers series got, confiscate. Like, it's bizarre. So the Night Marchers series turned into the latest show, which is Horror Movies in Space, and which makes no sense to me because the show existed before Horror Movies in Space. And I know that the show was in there. Somehow, I don't know if it's Podbean's fault or my fault, the movie or the show turned into Horror Movies in Space, as well as Horror Movies in Space having its own show. So I apologize if you guys started listening to the Night Marchers and were like, what the fuck is this? Yeah, something weird happened. It's fixed now. And thank you to the listener that brought it to my attention, and I fixed it. So again, apologies there.
Nice. All right. Some things that I'm watching and been doing that some of them are related to our topic today. I posted to our Facebook page yesterday a show that I was watching. I'm obsessed now with haunted asylums, and I will be doing a show on that the next time it's my turn. And I watched World's Biggest Ghost Hunt, Penhurst Asylum on A&E. And if you have, I'm all streaming, but I have Sling, and Sling has includes A&E. But if there's an A&E app, I believe you can get through like Fire Stick. At any rate, the World's Biggest Ghost Hunt was a 2-hour special with a bunch of ghost hunters that I haven't seen before, which is nice because it wasn't like Zach Baggins or anybody super obnoxious.
Yeah,
that was fun to watch. I just have been super into just the haunted history of different old places lately. And the Pennhurst Asylum in Pennsylvania is no exception to very historically haunted, cool backstory kind of places. So if you're able to check it out, do that. Another one that I have not watched yet, and I have seen some good reviews on those, 6.1 on IMDb out of 3,000 reviews, is called Gonjiam, I believe, if that's how it's pronounced. It's a haunted asylum, and it actually is subtitled, but it's from Japan. I have not watched it yet because I have to be fully awake to read subtitles, and I've been sick this week. But that is something that I think I recommend because, like I said, it has really good reviews.
Okay.
So that was that. And then I have been watching The Outsiders, which is a new series on HBO. It's a very slow burn, kind of like Castle Rock, if anybody watched that series. I think that's on season 2 now. But The Outsiders, it's been a slow burn, but it's interesting. And it seems like as of episode 3, they might be dealing with El Coco, who is someone we are going to talk to of Legends and Folklores for our show topic today. The inspiration for this show came from a historic tour that I took last weekend, I think. Shout out to Haunted OC, Haunted Orange County. They do some fantastic historical presentations and tours. Their locations are amazing. A lot of times they'll find ways to feed people like really authentic foods during these different kinds of tours. Okay, so Haunted OC took us to a house of a female doctor. She was one of the first doctors in our country. Her full name is hyphenated because she divorced her first husband. So her name is Dr. Willella, and then the last name is Howe Waffle. And yes, that is Waffle, and it is her house. So I was equally as confused as listeners may be, which was the tour guides kept saying they were going to take us to the Waffle House. And I was like, why are we going to a breakfast place on a ghost tour?
Oh my gosh.
It is a beautifully restored Victorian home, and it is haunted, and I did have some really cool experiences there. But Christy, I wanted to mention it particularly because it reminded me a lot of the Winchester Mystery House, where you go in thinking that, Sarah Winchester is this kooky broad who's just crazy, and you find out that no, she was a damn innovator and, designed this amazing house and had all these accomplishments. But for her part, Dr. Waffle was, like I said, one of the first doctors in the country. She delivered over 1,000 babies in 38 years of practice. She actually dropped dead at a patient's side. She was tending to a patient when she just died. And she actually divorced her first husband, which is where she lost the last name Howe, and married Waffle. And the two doctors founded the house and began delivering babies there. But the house is located in the heart of Savannah, and that is in Orange County. And so the highlight of the tour was all about different Latin American or Latino origin ghost stories and folklore. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have Yardley start us off with one that we've heard of, which is the origin tale for La Llorona.
Absolutely. So the origin tale begins with Maria, a beautiful but vain woman who marries a rich man. Maria and her husband have 2 children, but after a few happy years, their marriage hits a rough patch. He begins to spend less time at home, ignoring her but lavishing attention on her children. One day when Maria was walking with her children, she sees her husband with another lady. Furious with what she'd seen, she throws their children into a river, watching as they disappear. It's only then that she suddenly realizes what she's done and is immediately filled with regret. Maria runs down the riverbank wailing, "Oh, my children! Oh, my sons!" She desperately tries to rescue them, but to no avail. Maria then drowns herself, though others say she died of grief and remorse and is buried in the village the very next day. Of course, that's not the end of this tale. The night the villagers hear someone crying, it's Maria's voice asking, "Where are my children?" A figure in a long white robe, just like Maria's burial clothes, is seen walking around the riverbank. Some stories say when she arrived at Heaven's gates, she was refused access, banished instead to purgatory on earth until she could find her children. She was later dubbed La Llorona, meaning the weeping woman, and is apparently seen near rivers, oceans, and bodies of water, always after dark.
So here is La La Llorona in ancient mythology. While Maria's story is the most common telling of the horror tale, the actual mythology goes back further, to ancient Greece. The myth tells the story of how Hera, when she discovered Zeus's affair with Lamia, forces the demigoddess to eat her own children. Oh. Lamia then wanders the earth, devouring children she catches. Medea, who has 2 children with Jason the Argonaut, kills the children after Jason leaves her for another 2. Damn, why they gotta punish the kids so much? Apparently, sightings of a weeping lady walking the streets were also reported more than a decade before the Spaniards arrived in the Valley of Mexico in 1519. This folkloric myth of a woman laminating the loss of her children was and is a powerful message rooted in the values and cultures of our people. A myth. Carmen Tafola, president of the Texas Institute of Letters, told Elle. That transmits a valuing of children above all else, of regret and search for redemption. Her haunting nature and ever-present wails serve as warning signs of danger and the imminent loss of future generations.
And I just want to highlight here, and I've told this story on the show before, and Christy and I could get going for days about how many, starting with Adam and Eve, and how many mythology stories are all about jealous, vain women who got to be mad about a man or got to be temptresses or basically otherwise doing really wicked things like killing their own children. But I do want to say that when I did the Black Star Canyon hike, also through Haunted OC, they talked about another possible origin story for La Llorona, that basically conquerors, and this could be of any land, of any place at any time that you have conquerors that go in and rape and pillage and, kill whole villages full of people and steal and all these kind of things. Oftentimes, the women and children are taken as slaves, or they're killed, the children are, or sometimes the children are actually sent overseas to be pets or slaves for the conquerors' wives, and that leaves the mothers to basically weep in this world, in this life, and the next for their lost kids. So, it's not always about a jealous or pissy woman doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm. Girl. Don't even go there. Don't even get me started.
All right. Well, let's talk about the origins of El Chupacabra. Now, this was sourced from jasoncalavito.com. One of the most popular cryptozoological creatures is the El Chupacabra, the Latin American goat sucker, so named from the creature's alleged habit of sucking the blood of goats and other livestock. The first modern report of the chupacabra occurred in Puerto Rico in 1995 when Madeline Tolentino claimed to see a lizard-like creature that skeptic Benjamin Radford had pervasively argued was in fact derived from a memory of the extraterrestrial in the 1995 movie Species. Around the same time, there was a rash of animal deaths, leading some to connect Tolentino's sighting to the dead animals, giving birth to the modern legend. The origin of the name Chupacabra, literally means goat sucker, is attributed in some popular sources to Silverio Perez, a Puerto Rican comedian who used the word to describe the animal Tolentino claimed to see and to link that sighting with a rash of unexplained animal deaths on the island. However, while he may have been the first to use the word to describe the alleged creature, he was not the originator of the term. In fact, the Chupacabra name derives from 2,300 years of European and American traditions about nocturnal creatures that prey on livestock. And it all started with a small, completely harmless little bird. The first Chupacabra was not a monster, nor was it a vampire. Originally, the goat sucker was so named not because the creature sucked blood like a vampire, but because it sucked milk directly from the teat. The legend originates in a story told about the European nightjar, a small fish, nocturnal, and insectivorous bird that developed a bad reputation, earning it the name goat sucker. The first author to record this story is Aristotle in his History of Animals, written around 350 BCE. In later folklore, many other birds became confused with the ancient goat sucker, and the association with the mutilation and blood continued. During the Middle Ages, the nightjar was believed to kill the goats it sucked. in medieval England, the nightjar became associated with the evil spirit Puck himself, associated with the devil. And something real quickly I want to say, the chupacabra, it's definitely all over pop culture. Right now, and, everybody knows I love my online shooters, so I play a lot of Call of Duty, and there are different skins that you can add to the weapons that you've got. And I just so happen to have one of my weapons outfitted with a chupacabra skin, and it makes it look all mangy and messed up. You know what I'm saying? It makes it look pretty messed up. But it's kind of funny how these things in folklore, that they just pop up all over the place. And when you introduce something like that into video games, that kind of broadens the more people kind of knowing about it. So I think that's pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. So that was all I wanted to add.
Don't go to New Mexico and scream that the chupacabra does not exist, because you might get chased out, or they might throw a chupacabra at you. Just kidding. Very much believed in New Mexico. And also, in fact, my dad has like a quote unquote stuffed one. It's like a bunch of animals like sewn together and put on a stand. And we have it he has it as like work shed, and it's like the weirdest looking thing ever. He also has a jackalope in there too. It's like a rabbit with antlers, and we got a lot of weird shit in New Mexico.
A lot of the things that people confuse, I'm pretty sure that both of you online have seen like the mangy animals.
Oh, you're going to see that. Yeah, don't spoil it. It's in here. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sorry.
I just got a little excited because I immediately started thinking, but all right, go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the nightjar. It is native to Puerto Rico, and they have been able to find printed references to the bird on the islands, such as chotacabra, dating back to at least 1948, when the Puerto Rico Department of Agriculture described it. But certainly it had been so known much earlier. The bird was once common on Puerto Rico, but its numbers declined in the 20th century. It was even thought extinct. Today, it is extremely endangered, with perhaps fewer than 1,500 left in the wild. Many early attacks were specifically attributed to the monstrous birds, including a wave of sightings in 1975. Among the victims in 1995 were 8 sheep, 3 roosters, and a teddy bear. During August 1995, 150 farm animals and pets were allegedly killed, with dozens of additional animals said to have been killed in November, among which were a few goats. It was the application of the specific name of goatsucker that helped to define the direction of the story what the chupacabra would take. The bird for which it was named was rare. Most modern Puerto Ricans would never have seen one. Perhaps significantly, Tolentino's 1995 sighting of the creature, later labeled chupacabra, and the sightings that gave rise to the modern myth included the detail, later dropped, that the monster had feathers. Only later would it become the dog-like terror of modern myth.
And here's where Yardley was getting excited about. The chupacabra gets debunked, and this comes from Encyclopedia Britannica online. A different type of chupacabra was also reported in North American places such as Texas and New Mexico. Mm-hmm. These chupacabras were smaller and stood upon 4 feet. They were generally canine in appearance, but hairless. Actual specimens were produced, but they were identified by biologists as coyotes, dogs, or canine hybrids. The animals owed their strange appearance and hair loss resulting from mange, an infestation of the mite Cercoptis scabies, which is basically scabies. It was suggested that the canines attacked livestock because the debilitating effects of the infestation put wild prey out of their reach. So yes, this is something that they covered in the Haunted OC presentation, which was basically they suck blood because they were like things that were already dead, causing things to become deflated because they were too weak to hunt down prey and actually chew on it and all that kind of stuff. Barry O'Connor, an evolutionary biologist at the University of Michigan, told Live Science that photos of supposed chupacabras were actually of coyotes and dogs with sarcoptic mange infections. He said the animals lose their hair when the mites burrow into their skin. The canine skin also thickens, and their faces swell, and their teeth may become more prominent.
Chupacabra lives! Sorry. Just kidding.
Yes, for life.
For life.
But yeah, that's pretty messed up. I mean, I've seen a handful of dogs in my life that had mange, and yeah, it's pretty rough. I could see how someone, had they never saw something and maybe had a little bit of a buzz, could turn that into a legend, because it looks pretty gross. It's actually sad, but
yeah, dogs without hair are kind of scary looking. Sure, go Yardley.
I was trying. It took me. I didn't know that I put myself back on mute. All right, so let's talk about the legend of El Cocoy, or Coco. The myth of the Coco, or Cocoy, originated in Portugal and Galicia. The word Coco is used in a colloquial speech to refer to the human head in Spanish. Coco also means skull. In Spain, Portugal, and Latin America, including Brazil, parents sometimes invoke the Coco or Cuca as a way of discouraging their children from misbehaving. They sing lullabies or tell rhymes warning their children that if they don't obey their parents, El Coco will come and get them and eat them. It's not the way the Coco looks, but what it does that scares most. It is a child eater and a kidnapper. It may immediately devour the child, leaving no trace, or it may take the child away to a place of no return. But it only does this to disobedient children. It is on the lookout for children's misbehavior from the rooftops. It takes the shape of any dark shadow and stays watching. It represents the opposite of the guardian angel and is frequently compared to the devil. Others see the Coco as a representation of the deceased of the local community. During the Portuguese and Spanish colonization of Latin America, the legend of Coco was spread to the countries such as Mexico, Argentina, and Chile.
What is it about all these parents that relish in scaring the shit out of their kids to make them behave? Just take their damn phone away.
Parents do not fuck around. Yeah.
Shit.
And
you misbehave, you're going to get eaten. Fuck.
It's so extreme, though.
Yeah.
If you don't behave, this thing is going to come and eat you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Wow. All I did was leave the raisins on the counter.
Shit.
You know what I mean?
I used to see parents say, see that policeman over there? If you don't start behaving, he's going to come arrest you. And I'm like, don't fucking say that. Jesus Christ, you're going to make them scared of police officers. But these people created their own monster.
Of how this show, of how working on the show has ruined me is I was hanging out with a bunch of white parents last night, and they were all just to get our kids to sleep, we'll co-sleep with them for as many years as it takes. We'll do all these gentle things. And in my head, I'm just I just tell them that El Coco is going to come and eat their ass.
El Coco, you're going to get eaten by El Coco.
All the parents nowadays. Oh, so gentle.
There's a happy medium in between there where you don't co-sleep for life, but you also don't threaten that a beast is going to come gobble them up and eat them either. Surely, you guys, we can figure this out.
I mean,
it just cracks me up. Damn. But that was a lot. When you look back on the Grimm, the Brothers Grimm tales were all for kids. All of those tales were for kids, that they better behave or monsters were going to come eat them. What the fuck, man? So weird. Yeah. I guess life was harder back then, and so you got to prepare them for whatever's coming at them, and disease and war and real life monsters kings and queens and all that bullshit where there's wow. I mean, that's a way to parent. That's for sure.
Go hard or go home.
Exactly.
Yep.
There's no general description of the Cocoy as far as facial or body descriptions, but is stated that this shape-shifting being is extremely horrible to look at. The Cocoy is variously described as a shapeless figure, sometimes a hairy monster that hides in closets or under beds and eats children that misbehave when they are told to go to bed. Damn. The Cocoy is also the name of a female dragon who featured in various medieval celebrations in the Iberian Peninsula. In Portugal, one still survives in Monaco. She fights in some sort of medieval tournament with St. George during the Corpus Christi celebrations. She is called Santa Coca, an allusion to the Irish saint, or Coca Rabica, which means tailed coca. If she defeats St. George by scarring the horse, there will be a bad year for the crops and famine. So it's like Groundhog Day, but with a dragon. If the horse and St. George win by cutting off one of her ears with an earring in her tongue, the crops will be fertile. Oddly enough, the people cheer for St. Coca. Really? That's bizarre. We want famine and no food.
Yeah.
That's it. We're just inherently just want to vote within our least best interest, I guess. That's just still alive today.
Look at our elections. Anyway.
Yep. In the Catalonia, the Cuca Fera de Tortosa was, and I apologize to the Spanish people who are probably ready to bash my face in because I'm just totally hacking up their language, and it's a beautiful one. So again, apologies. Was first documented in 1457. It's a zoomorphic figure that looks like a tortoise with a horned spine, dragon claws, and a dragon head. The legend says she had to dine every night on 3 cats and 3 children. Wow. In Brazil, the Coca appears as a humanoid female alligator called Cuca. She is dressed like a woman with ugly hair and a sack on her back. Cuca appears as one of the main villains in children's books by Monteiro Lobato. But in the books, she appears like a powerful witch that attacks innocent children. She is an allusion to Coca, a dragon from the folklore of Portugal and Galicia? How come I've never heard of Galicia? Where is that?
It doesn't exist anymore. It's an ancient land.
Aww. Well, that makes me sad. I'll never see it.
Yeah. Note to self, put it on mute and then start coughing. Anyways, sorry for choking in the middle. That's okay. Talking, Christy. Traditionally in Portugal, however, the coco is represented by an iron pan with holes to represent a face with a light inside, or by a vegetable lantern carved from a pumpkin with 2 eyes and a mouth, which is left dark in places with light inside to scare people. That sounds kind of familiar, right? Mm-hmm. Breras, heads carved on pumpkins called coco, would be carried by the village boys stuck on top of wooden stakes. And I actually cut out a lot of this, but that's to represent the heads of their enemies. So the same name is given to the pumpkin perforated with the shape of a face with a candle burning inside. The ideas of a skull on fire that boys on many lands carry stuck on a stick.
So basically, we can just add another holiday that Americans have stolen from other cultures, because it seems like every single one of ours is stolen from something else.
I mean, adapted, but yes, we are one of the newer nations, so yes. I guess we had to get some customs somewhere, besides puritanical. Anyway, the custom was first mentioned where Iberian warriors, after the Battle of Selinunt in 469 BC, would hang the heads of the enemies on their spears. The children's fall custom of emptying pumpkins and carving eyes, nose, and mouth, looking for a somber expression, far from the tradition imported by recent Americanizing cultural mimicry, see, that's what we were just saying, is a cultural trait in ancient Iberian Peninsula. In the first half of the 20th century, the coco was an integral part of festivities like All Souls Day and the ritual begging, and I'm going to butcher this, of Pau por Dias. The tradition of Pau por Dias is a ritual begging for bread and cakes done door to door by children, though in the past, poor beggars would also take part. Its purpose is to share bread and treats gathered door to door with the dead of the community, who were eagerly awaited and arrived at night in the shape of butterflies or little animals during the traditional Magusto. In the close resemblance with the traditions of nowadays, say it with me, trick-or-treating. Very, very similar. Only, not only poor kids do it, apparently everybody trick-or-treats now. So, in the same city of Coimbra, it is customary for groups of children to walk on the streets on the 31st of October and the 1st and 2nd of November at nightfall with a hollow pumpkin with holes that were cut out pretending to be eyes, nose, and mouth as if it were a skull, and a stump of a candle lit from within, giving it a macabre look. To ensure that the souls found their way back home, the Batedor de Almas, whose mission were to lay souls, would go every night through the valleys and mountains, up on trees, ringing a little bell, or carrying a lantern and singing a prayer to the souls. Every Portuguese village had one.
All right, let's talk about the hooded cloak. In Portugal, coca is the name for a hooded cloak. It was also the name of the traditional hooded black wedding gown still in use at the beginning of the 20th century. In Portimao, during the Holy Week celebrations, a procession organized by the Catholic Brotherhoods, the herald, a man dressed in a black hooded cloak that covered his face and had 3 holes for eyes and mouth, led the procession and announced the death of Christ. The man was either named Coca, Farnicoco, or Death. The name Coca given to the cloak and to the man who wore the cloak. In 1498, the Portuguese King Manuel gave permission to the Catholic Brotherhood of the Misericordia to collect the bones and remains from the gallows of those who had been condemned to death and put them in a grave every year on All Saints' Day. The Brotherhood and a procession were followed by the Faricocos, who carried the tombs and collected the bones. On to the land of the dead. The land of the dead is a mythic land which appears in traditions from various cultures around the ancient world. Probably the oldest mention of a mythic land of the dead located in the Iberian Peninsula is in the Lebor Gabala Arin. The legends of Portugal and Spain speak of an enchanted land, the Morama, the land where the enchanted people, the Moros, dwell under the earth in Portugal and Galicia. Morama is the other world, the world of the dead, from where everything comes back. The Morama is ruled by an enchanted being who is called King Moro. His daughter is the Princess Mora, a shapeshifter who changes herself into a snake or can even be seen riding a dragon.
So yeah, just kind of the things that we mentioned, just takeaways, like Christy said, the tradition that we have in America of stealing other traditions. Our only tradition is the theft of others. Woo. But I'd like to say adaptation into something that now has cultural significance, I guess, to us. But I just really think it's neat to look at these things and kind of understand where they came from and just kind of know the history, even if you choose to celebrate however the hell you want today. Did you guys have any thoughts or comments?
No, I think it's really interesting. I always thought, as maybe as a Scottish person does, is that it was more of a Celtic thing. Maybe we took a little bit boat from everything. But yeah, very interesting that for some reason different cultures celebrate that day. I find that kind of bizarre. Like, why is it that everybody, I guess it's the beginning of some sort of cycle or something. I don't know. It's just kind of strange that both Portuguese, Scottish, Mexicans celebrate the 31st of October this way.
Yeah. Makes me want to go back and watch that film Coco, the little kid film, because it's actually pretty accurate to some of these things.
Wow.
Yeah, that's actually a phenomenal animated feature. It is. I love that.
I've never seen it.
Bought it. I actually bought it with my own money.
What? It must be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a good recommend, though, Moni.
Yeah. So, Miss Christy, you want to take us forward to the next legend?
Sure. Another ghost from south of the border, La Planchada, or the Iron Lady, is a Mexican ghost that haunts hospitals. The story of La Planchada is varied with a number of legends as to the origin of the spirit. In all the stories, the ghost is invariably a female nurse. Some tales say she was in love with a doctor who spurned her, leading her to take her own life. And in others, she is simply a curmudgeon who disapproved of younger nurses. Or perhaps she killed a patient in an attempt to ease their pain. One origin story places her at Hospital Juarez in the early 1930s, where she fell in love with a doctor who was secretly engaged to another woman. She was unaware of the doctor's engagement and began a torrid affair with the man. A few months later, he told her he was going out of town on a business conference, but in reality, he was going on his honeymoon with his new wife. While he was gone, a coworker found the woman pining for her lost love and revealed the doctor's secret. The nurse fell into a deep depression, which led to her contracting some sort of disease. This disease killed her, and she is said to return to the room where she died.
Whatever the origin, the ghost is associated with hospitals where it can be seen walking the halls at night and checking on patients. The ghost is alternatively described as floating or walking, but always silent, and in some accounts, it glows. Sometimes it appears as a normal nurse, a full human manifestation, and other times it's an evil-looking creature. The uniform it wears is usually out of date. Despite the possible horrific appearance of this ghost, it is oftentimes heals patients in its visits at night, curing them of a disease or healing wounds and then moving them to other rooms to recover. The patients usually describe a nurse who appears in the room and somehow made them feel better. Hospital Juarez, being one of the possible origins of the ghost, is known for appearances in La Planchada. And it's said that the ghost returns to the room where she died and heals whoever's inside. See, that's the type of ghost I want.
Yeah, how about they be nice?
Yeah, I'm all about that.
So the legend of El Silbón, or the Whistler, comes from Venezuela and Colombia. It's the story of a young spoiled boy, another bad kid, who asked his father to get him some venison for dinner. While his father was away, the boy grew impatient and went looking for him. When he found him and saw him empty-handed, he killed him. Damn. He then took his father's entrails to his mother to cook for dinner without her knowing. Damn. After noticing how tough the meat was, she realized it belonged to her husband, and she cursed her son for all eternity. Some accounts say she then called his grandfather, who physically punished him before having several dogs hunt the boy relentlessly. El Silbón is known as an omen of death and is described as a thin and tall ghost. He's known for his distinctive whistle that is deceiving. If you hear his whistle up close, then you are safe. But if you hear it far away, that means it's likely too late for you. He is often depicted as carrying a bag of bones. Some say it's his father's bones, but others say it's his victim's remains. Nice.
Nice. So here's another legend, El Sombreron, and I'm sorry if I butchered that. True to his name, this Guatemalan mythical being wears a big black hat that covers most of his face. He is very short and is said to carry a silver guitar to serenade women with long hair and big eyes. He is said to be obsessed with braiding, so much so that he braids the manes and tails of horses, mules, and more. When there are no animals around, he looks for young women whose hair he can braid. Yeah, because that's not creepy at all to have your hair braided against your will by an unseen person. In one account, it said he found a beautiful woman with long hair and large eyes that he was mesmerized by, so he stood outside her balcony. Upon hearing his music, she became enthralled by him. But her parents were not pleased. Every night, El Sombreron would hypnotize the girl with his music, to the point where she stopped eating and sleeping. Before she went mad, her parents cut her hair, which caused El Sombreron to lose interest in her. Isn't that pretty typical? So, and before we roll forward, I like reading some user-submitted kind of stories, and so I ended up finding a website called yourghoststories.com, and I actually posted this section from Mexico on our Creepy Facebook page. So if you're interested in these stories, check them out. And Yardley, this one's kind of long. I apologize. It's a lot of reading for you, but I think it's a fun story.
My parents moved into their house in Mexico about 20 years ago. My mother made the move by herself. My father stayed behind in Seattle, tying up some loose ends. I agreed to help my mom move and stay with her until my dad joined her, which was to happen in a span of about 2 to 3 months. My mom and I got to the house the day before the moving company was scheduled to arrive. That gave my mom enough time to hire some much-needed help. That was the day we met Letty, who became my mom's housekeeper for the following 8 years. She was a godsend, hardworking, loyal, and knew just about everyone in the neighborhood. Letty helped us hire some men to move all the heavy furniture while we unpacked all the boxes. It took the 3 of us about a week of hard work to get everything put away, but finally we were sitting in the living room exhausted, but basking in the glory of our accomplishments when we started hearing noises coming from a home bar we had in the living area. This was a wooden bar, like you have in taverns. It has 3 wine bottle racks, shelves for wine glasses, stemware, and has drawers in the back for cocktail utensils, as well as a storage cabinet where we kept things like a blender, ice bucket, martini shakers, etc. Like I mentioned, everything was put away and in order. The first thing we thought was that maybe a rat had gotten in. We hadn't seen any evidence of rodents, but at the same time, it was the only thing that made sense. Letty got up and was heading towards the bar when suddenly we heard growling coming from the storage cabinet. The wine glasses started shaking and clicking. The cabinet door started slamming. It literally sounded like two wild animals were fighting in there. I was so terrified I couldn't even get up and run. I stayed there with my heart pounding, listening to my mother pray and scream. Then, just as suddenly as it all started, it stopped. We were too scared to check. Letty, being the brave one, grabbed the broom and opened both cabinet and drawer doors. Nothing came out, no animals, nothing. Everything was untouched. We got out of the house and headed for the nearest church. Letty knew the priest and was able to get him to go back with us to bless the house. My mom and I slept in the same room for a few nights after that, too scared to be by ourselves. A few weeks later, my mom and Letty were digging in the front yard, working on a flower bed when they came upon some jars. They pulled them out. There was little rag dolls that had pins stuck in them and the other things that they could make out.
That's never good.
Does anyone else also start to feel like Letty's some kind of super villain in all this thing? Like she's actually leading him into all this mess?
Poor Letty. She just wanted a job.
So they didn't open the jars. Letty said she knew someone that would know how to dispose of them, so she took them with her. The place where they were digging is directly on the other side of the wall where the bar is. I don't know if this finding had anything to do with the incident a few weeks before, but it's a big coincidence that the noises were coming so close to where these weird objects were found. Everything was quiet for a while, nothing out of ordinary. Then we hosted a party one day. I think it was a housewarming. There were only a few guests left, mostly family. It was around 3 a.m. Some people were sitting on the bar stools. Others were standing around the bar, talking and drinking, when suddenly a mirror frame with the word bar that was hanging on the wall shattered. It didn't just crack, it shattered. Well, that was an immediate party pooper because everyone cleared out of there real fast. On the other time, my mother was walking around at night before bed, securing doors and windows. She had just made it back to her bedroom when she swears she heard glass breaking. She thought that all the wine and liquor bottles had fallen and shattered, but when she went to check, everything was in order. No broken glass. Upon inspecting, she noticed one of the windows next to the bar was open. This didn't scare her too much because there's bars on that window, so there's no way someone can get in, even if the window was open. But she swears she had checked that window a few minutes before, and it was closed. She thought that maybe someone had thrown a rock and shattered the glass, but there was no broken glass anywhere. She checked and the window wasn't broken. It was open, meaning someone had to slide it to open it. She says that it's possible she missed seeing the window open, but that was the loud noise she heard, like dishes breaking. When she shared this with the family, we told her that maybe the noise was coming from the outside, and with the window open, it sounded close. She is very adamant that the noise came from the inside. Another incident involving this home bar, I was randomly taking pictures of the house when I noticed something very strange was showing in a picture of the bar. One of the stools has a scary image. It looks like a devil with horns. I showed this to my family, and they were all freaked out. My mom insisted that I delete the image from my camera. I never did. Problem is, I can't find the camera. I only take pictures with my phone now, but I'm searching and will upload it if I find it. The image is very clear. It's not distorted. You can see it without anyone telling you what to look for. What I do have is a lot of pictures of family and friends sitting at the bar, and on a few of them, you can see orbs. I don't want to share those because of privacy and because orbs can mean just about anything. I've tried taking pictures of the bar with my phone, and I don't get anything anymore. The house has been quiet lately. I've done a lot of cleansings and blessings. It will stay that way for a while, and then suddenly, for some unknown reason, it wakes up again. By the way, I will submit a story about Letty at a later time.
Uh-oh.
She turned out to be a bruja or a witch. She showed me a lot of things that I cannot explain, and I would like to know what all of you think.
Oh, did they ever come back and she tell the story?
Oh, yeah. The page that I posted has all kinds of, actually, that writer and then the one that you're about to read have a lot of different stories on there.
This one's called The Wall Crawler. Ooh.
I thought you would like that, wall crawler.
I like those. About 5 years ago, I was at my parents' house waiting for my kids to come home from a birthday party. I was sitting in the dining room facing the window, reading from my Kindle, when I caught movement in front of me. I looked up and saw this guy in the yard jump up and climb a 15-foot concrete wall that separates our yard from the neighbors. I ran out of the house thinking I had an intruder, but the guy was nowhere to be seen. I ran out to my neighbor's house to see if I could catch the guy. I practically ran into the neighbor's yard uninvited and saw about 15 people having a cookout. I told them what had happened, and they told me they didn't see or hear anyone. I kept insisting that I saw a guy with blue jeans and a white and blue striped shirt climb over the wall into their yard. They started searching, mainly just to humor me, but didn't find anyone. The intruder would have had to cross the yard to get out or climb up the roof of the house and walk across to the other side. Some of the ladies were inside the house preparing food, and they said they didn't hear any footsteps on the roof. I went back to my parents' house feeling confused and embarrassed. When I told my family, they all thought I imagined it. I'm 100% sure I did not. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, Adrian, my roommate, was talking on the phone with a friend that lives across from us. His house is one next to the one that is directly across from mine. It was around midnight. Mario had just gotten back from a party called Adrian when he saw his bedroom light was on. Mario's was standing on the balcony looking over the neighborhood, just chatting away. Anyway, they were in the middle of a conversation when Adrian hears Mario gasp. When he asked what was wrong, Mario said, "There's a black shadow in the shape of a man climbing up the wall in my yard." Adrian said he was going to check it out, but Mario told him not to. He said it looked creepy because the shadow stopped and it was just stuck to the wall like a spider. He said no human can do that. Of course, as soon as Adrian told me, I thought about what I had seen before. Not sure if both sightings are related. My guy was solid, and I remember the color clothing he wore. Mario's guy was more like a dark shadow or silhouette of a man. I saw my guy in plain daylight. Mario saw his around midnight. Then again, how common is it to see people crawling up walls? I also don't know if Mario's sighting has anything to do with the weird stuff going on around in my house the last few weeks. I wasn't living in this house at the time I saw my guy, so I'm not sure if my parents were experiencing anything at the time. I do know we've always heard and seen things off and on in that house. It goes on its own and then starts happening again. Nothing too scary. Lately, it has gotten very active. All the cliche hauntings you've heard about, we have.
So the Weeping Woman, and these are submitted. Before I tell you the story, I will tell you who the Weeping Woman is, and we already know this. In Mexico, it's very common to hear about this person. This woman killed her kids many years ago. She drowned them because of depression due to the fact that her husband cheated on her. Since then, she has been heard throughout Mexico. She cries walking on empty streets asking for her kids. I really didn't believe she existed. It was 2:30 a.m., and I was doing college homework in the living room when all of a sudden I heard a scream from my gate. It was like crying and screaming at the same time, but this scream was also like an echo. Before this, everything was so quiet you couldn't even hear the crickets. When I heard it, I instantly got goosebumps. I was so scared. I tried standing up, but I couldn't for a couple seconds. My heart was beating so hard. This type of scream was like from The Conjuring 2 whenever the nun would come out. That's how I heard it. After some seconds, I was able to move little by little, and as soon as I was able to move, I ran to my room and just covered myself up with a blanket. Early in the morning, I told my family about my experience, and they told me, just don't stay up so late next time. A few weeks later, my brother told me that he heard her. He was taking a shower at 2 a.m. when all of a sudden he heard her really close. He heard her scream 3 times. He got goosebumps and got out of the shower right away. people say that if you hear her close, it means she's far. And we talked about this earlier. And if you hear her far away, that means she's actually pretty close. She has been heard throughout Mexico in some states, especially those who live by a river and in a small village. Those who stay up late on a very quiet night might hear her, but I don't want to hear her ever again.
Wow.
Dun, dun, dun.
Cool.
All right. Yeah, that takes us to the end of our Latin folklores and legends and ghost stories. I hope you guys all enjoyed it.
Makes me want a margarita.
Well, it's Super Bowl Sunday. Why not?
Absolutely.
Sports and stuff.
I mean, I pretty much wanted a margarita anyway, but now I'd be like, but I just did Latin and Mexican folklore.
Excuses.
Must celebrate.
Pronunciations of languages we don't speak.
Exactly.
I also want to say I'm going to be doing a haunted asylum episode, but we had a listener on our Creepin' It Real Facebook page. Last week I had posted something about serial killers and their zodiac signs. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of funny because, for starters, there's a lot of similarities. Like, there's only like 3 different signs on there for all the major serial killers, which is kind of interesting. And then some of the signs are supposed to be kind of the more mellow ones. And these are people that like ate people, bludgeon people. But we a listener who actually said that she would love to have a future podcast discussion on this topic. So I just want to say to her, Stephanie, thank you for being one of our top collaborators on the page, for talking to us there. And at some point, we will do a discussion on serial killers and their zodiac signs.
You know, it'd be even cooler as if those 3 signs were like our signs. The 3.
I know, right?
I think if it's
I'm surprised that Capricorns aren't cutting bitches because.
Well, I believe
I think John Wayne Gacy is mine.
I know Ted Bundy is mine.
I think it's like
Pisces.
I think there's like 3 of them for me or something.
Yeah, I think there's 3 Sagittarius ones too. And I was like, damn. I thought it was just
it's
Ted
all
Bundy.
Pisces, Sagittarius, and Virgo, and some Gemini.
Well, the Virgo and Gemini
out of 20 different names, there's only like 4 signs, which is kind of interesting.
Interesting.
So on that note, can I get your guys' social?
I'm just kidding. So,
you can find me on social media at militant_marker.
Miss Christy, your social, and what's the next show?
Okay, you can find me at Creepin' It Christy on Instagram, and then the Creepin' It Real Show on Twitter. Just search us, we're there. And next week, I'm going to talk about the Native American Thunderbird legend. But there's a lot of evidence that this bird actually existed. And there's also evidence now that's coming out that the bird might be around still. It's just showing up kind of like Nessie every once in a while. We were going to do a little bit of a deep dive about that. But if you look at pictures from, the 1800s, right when they started taking photographs, there are pictures of giant birds. And I don't know how they would have faked that because they didn't really have much shit to work with back then. So pretty interesting topic. And I guess we're just going to continue on our folklore and mythology because we've done a few of them this last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Nice. All right. And I am Moni Bear across the board, MoniBarre. And follow me. I've been doing a lot more ghost adventures, different types of haunted tours and things like that. I will be doing a ghost tour of the San Juan Capistrano mission here in Southern California next weekend. And that is also with Haunted OC, who, again, shout out to them for the inspiration for this show and for putting together a lot of really great tours if you're into that sort of thing. So with that, it'll already have been Super Bowl Sunday, but I wish you a day of really good eats and whatever team, if you give a crap, that wins for you, and lots of day drinking and lots of fun. So thanks, everybody.